When you attach multiple click events to elements such as buttons inside a for loop, the click event always gives us the last index value, regardless of what button is pressed. This is one of the common problems developers face when they start learning JavaScript. By the end of this episode, you will not only know what causes this issue, but also a few ways to fix it. Let's get started. My name is Raja Tamil and you are watching Soft Author. We publish useful videos every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. To demonstrate that issue, I have a sample HTML and a JavaScript file here. This HTML file has a div tag that has an ID called buttons container. In the app.js file, I have a DOM reference to the buttons container at the top. Then inside the for loop, I created a button element and added text to it, in this case the index value. After that, I have attached a click event to the button with an anonymous callback function. Finally, I appended the button to the buttons container like so. Pretty straightforward. Run the code and here is the issue. This is happening because of Hoisting. I know it's kind of weird name at the start, but it's not as intimidating as it sounds. So what is Hoisting? Well, Hoisting is one of the JavaScript mechanisms that will move any variable which is declared with the var keyword to the top of its scope, regardless of how deep it's declared. And this applies to function declarations as well. Let's see that in action. I'm going to create a function called do something like this. Inside it, create a variable called a equals 10. Then console log variable a after its declaration and call the function. When we run the code, it prints 10 in the browser console as expected. But what if we console log a before it's declared? And I got undefined. This is because JavaScript sees the variable a is declared with var keyword, so it moves it to the top of the do something function and set its initial value to undefined before the code execution. We can also set our own value to the variable at the top, a equals 20 for example, even before its declaration, and still it works. That behavior is called hoisting. Now let's switch back to our code to see what's happening here. The I variable declared with var keyword in the for loop header will be automatically moved to the top of the page as it's not declared inside any function, so it becomes a global variable because of hoisting. Let's run the code in the console and I can access variable I using window.i and the value I get is 5. Okay, so why 5? On every iteration, variable I is bound to the same variable outside of the callback function. So the I variable keeps changing, and when the last iteration happens, it will be assigned a value of 5. That's the reason why we always get 5 when any button is pressed. The solution to this issue is to create some sort of private variable that is being created on each iteration. So the one solution is wrapping the button event handler code with something called closure. In JavaScript, functions are also closures. What that means is a variable that is declared outside of a function can be accessed inside it. But that's not really what we want. What we want is a variable with a private scope that is being created on each iteration. To do that, what I'm going to do is to declare a closure function, which is basically a regular function. So create a function called SumFunc like so, and move the button event listener line inside that function. Then call the function after its declaration, passing the global variable I as an argument, which you know it's declared in the for loop header. This will create a private scoped variable which can only be available inside some func function. Then we can capture that private variable as a parameter in the some func function declaration. And I'm going to call it index. Then I will have access to that private index variable inside the button callback function. And run the code. Now you can see each button gets their own private variable called index with the correct value. Nice. I can also use IIFE, immediately invoked function expression, instead of using a regular function closure. To do that, get rid of the function name from the declaration as well as the caller statement. Then wrap the function using opening and closing parentheses. Finally, call it using opening and closing parentheses after the wrapper closing parentheses with an argument I. Save and run it, and I get the same results. Nice. Let's take a look at how to use forEach loop instead of for to fix this same variable scoping issue. To demonstrate that, I'm going to create a variable called numbers, which is an array of numbers. Then run forEach method on the numbers array object like this. This takes a callback function as an argument, so let's create that callback function with a parameter called I. By default, forEach provides a clean and natural way of getting a distinct callback closure function on every iteration. So the parameter I will be private to that function. I'm going to copy and paste the old code that had an issue before inside the forEach callback function and run it. As you can see, it works magically. Great. The last and my favorite solution is to use the let keyword when declaring an I variable instead of var in the for loop header. Let's go back to the for loop example. In there, all we have to do is to change var to let. The let keyword actually binds a fresh callback function with an index value on each iteration rather than using the same reference over and over again. Let's test it out, and it works great. Nice. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please consider subscribing to this channel so that you do not miss any of our Monday morning videos. Again, my name is Raja Tamil and you're watching Soft Author. I will see you in the next video.